special occasion. I'll try to remember quickly. After this little session in my studio in Boston, he said, let's go to a party. He was invited to a party and he took me along. And he had a little brandy in his pocket. He took the brandy out and started drinking. And I was thinking, you know, that was a nice session in my studio, but he didn't say anything really about my music, whether he liked it or whether he didn't like it. He didn't say anything. So anyway, now he had a little brandy and he called me over and said, you know, Lukas, my teacher was Rimsky-Korsakov. I said, yes, I know that. Well, Rimsky-Korsakov never really let on. I mean, never let me think that maybe I was a little different from others, a little more special. But I knew he knew if he went like this to me. That little gesture kept me going for the next 3 years. So that's the only time he actually mentioned his teacher, Rimsky-Korsakov. Yes.
Lukas, there was a performance in New York of Oedipus Rex, which I believe you conducted.
I conducted.
And
that was part of the Stravinsky Festival.
Yes, and was designed by
Larry
Rivers. Was Stravinsky there? Did he comment? It was a very famous
yes, he was
scandal.
There.
And
he was there. As a matter of fact, he didn't like at all what Larry Rivers had done to Oedipus Rex, because Larry Rivers had the idea of making it like a boxing match and having the chorus, the audience. It was a very strange kind of setup in which the Oedipus was made a little bit ridiculous, and I think Stravinsky minded that very much. So he said to me, I want to take a bow before that painter comes on stage, the one who did the staging, and so you wouldn't have to share the bow with Larry Rivers. It was a very strange idea. Anyway, he liked the performance otherwise, and I thought it was a very good performance, the chorus and beautiful. It's a great work with Oedipus Rex. Very new classical, very great.
Did you play, I can't remember who played the performance of Les Noces that he conducted with 4
Samuel
pianos?
Barber, Roger Sessions, myself, and who was the 4th one? Cool. We were the 4 pianists for Les Noces. Stravinsky choir. Any more questions? Yes?
Did he ever mention how he felt when people didn't accept his music?
Would you say that again?
Did he ever mention how he felt when people didn't accept his music?
Well, I think his reaction was that of every composer who has a good, strong ego. The important thing is whether he likes it himself. It's not so important what people think. The piece of music is there to stay. It's not like a performance. I mean, a performance really much more at the mercy of the audience, because the performance is over. But the piece of music lives on, so it doesn't matter really what. But he was very critical of production. Even of Leonard Bernstein, he was very critical. And that conductors to be extremely rhythmic, like holding the reins.
Can you talk about the specific ways in which Stravinsky's music influenced your own music and your composition?
How it was just a love of his music influenced my music. I can't really explain exactly what happened, but especially some of my earlier music reminds one of certain Stravinsky elements, and even some later music occasionally. You will find a moment of this, like Coccinella, even in my flute concerto. I never avoid influences. The trick is to make them your own. As Stravinsky said so beautifully, I think I quoted this before. He said, you must always steal, but never from yourself. And that's a beautiful remark, because when you steal from yourself, you learn nothing. You add nothing to your oeuvre. Whereas when you steal from others, he didn't really mean steal, he means making it your own, but he didn't know that expression. Making it your own, then it becomes your own, you enrich your vocabulary. And then that's a very important thing, and that's what happens to me whenever I fall in love with a piece of music and I use it, make it my own, and it enriches my vocabulary. Which is, I think, very important. I think we should never limit ourselves. That reminds me, I have here a little letter I can read for you that I wrote to a young composer some time ago, and it was published, I forgot where, but I'm going to read it for you. Letter to a young composer. Sorry to hear that you're having difficulties with Professor Johnson. It seems to me all you're guilty of is a bit of musical insurrection. My teacher even threw me out twice because there's a complaint Foss wants to know but doesn't want to follow. Well, now that I have a little more perspective, I don't think his attitude was unreasonable. It would not have done me any harm to follow, to accept what he had to offer. There's time for rebellion later. You ask, how can one be sure one is a composer? I had a good look at your duo. You are. I can tell because we're in the same boat, in the same trouble. We face the same problems. How to make choices in the face of overwhelming choice. How to avoid arbitrary choices. Of course there are no criteria for right and wrong. Of course you're not sure. You don't know where you're going? That's good, you'll go further. Composition is a mysterious and therefore frightening affair. You're afraid? Don't you think I am? I remember the first time I felt that way. I was 8 and composing in an opera, of course. Grown-ups gave me all sorts of advice. Walk around a bit if you think of something. You'll have a beautiful idea. I thought, what if I can't think of any idea? I once knew a little boy who took some brains from the butcher's apart, discovered that there wasn't any idea in them. I wonder to this day what he thought an idea would look like. The years passed, I composed good and not so good music, conscientious music, precocious music, too cautious music. I had to unlearn to learn how to write bad notes. I mean the courage to make mistakes. This I miss in your work so far. It is safe music, safe within the confines of an avant vocabulary. You're mentioning your love for rock, and you want to fuse it with what you call serious music. You say that's what I did in my parody. No, fusion belongs to chemistry. In art we don't fuse, we use and we spoil. A poem, for instance, when we set it to music. That ragtime which Ives loved and used no longer swings. Ives made it his own, he stylized it. In its folk form it had youth. Composers always love and envy young music. Brahms' Liebeslieder waltzes were an homage to the young. The waltz was then the new way of life, frenzied, wild. When we hear Viennese waltz today, we see in our mind's eye old heads shaking wistfully. Someday the rock music you and I love for youth will be old people's music. Whereas the große Fuge of Beethoven always was unyoung and always will be unold. Yet even in this most passionate and cerebral of Beethoven's works, there is a march lurking behind the fugue. Late Beethoven steeped in marches, Schubert in the Lied, Bach in the chorale, Ives in hymn tunes, something simple used and distorted and frozen into permanence. We are in the monument building business, each work a celebration, no matter how dissonant, how violent. Right music, that is, get a lot of baggage behind you, as Copland once said. Don't be your own connoisseur. Don't assess your work at every step. Don't worry about originality. Don't suffer. Not at this stage of the game. Later you can carry the burden of the world on your shoulders. I came across some advice Beethoven gave to himself.